Welcome to this beginner-friendly line and wash watercolour tutorial, and don't worry if you can't draw because I'll provide you with a trace down. Okay, let's get started. I'm using a water and fade proof liner pen here to outline the image. You want this pen to be waterproof, otherwise it's going to lift off. Now, as I said at the start, don't worry if you can't draw. I'll provide you with something to trace down like this, and I'll tell you later on in the video how you can obtain it. So once you've done your trace down, all you're looking to do is go around every single part of the plant as kind of neatly as you can to begin with. I'm using a 0005 fine liner pen here to do this, but just use the thickness that you feel comfortable with. I really like the fine point on this pen. As you can see, this one's from Etcher, but just go around the outside of this and just to create this really sharp line drawing. Now there are lots of different ways that you can do line and wash, and I've sped this up here for you. You could either put your watercolor painting down first and then outline it, or the way that I'm showing you today, so just tracing down your drawing with pencil and then outlining it like this. Super easy to do, and this is actually a really good way if you're not feeling like committing to a full tutorial and a full painting. This is a really lovely thing to sort of sit down and do, grab yourself a cup of tea and just relax into the painting. So you can see once I've got that drawing down, I'm just adding a few details. Now I'm not being too fussy here, I'm just adding a few sort of markings on the magnolia just to sort of give it a little bit of shading, very, very gentle. So I'm just adding a few more bits here by using a really light technique on the paper. Really pressing very, very lightly to give these kind of flowing lines, to give the flower the sense of movement. That's what we're looking for here. You don't need to be too fussy. You can be as dramatic or as gentle as you want to with this. It's entirely your painting, so make it as unique as you. So just carry on adding a few more details where you want to, and you can see that I'm just using a really light touch, almost in the way that I would do if I was sketching with a pencil. I'm just using some shading here by just using a light touch to the side of the stem, as you can see. And just adding one or two details at this point. Nothing too fussy. As I said, this is all about relaxing into the painting, just following those pencil lines and just getting used to how it feels. You can see the swatches that I've got on the side there. I'm really loving these kind of muted tones at the moment, and I'll be mixing a few colours up once I've done this initial outline with the pen. I've let this dry a little bit, and when I've got all my lines in place, I'm using a kneaded or putty eraser just to roll out that pencil line. You don't want that pencil line to be showing at this point. You want a really nice, clean, sharp outline. You can use the patting motion to lift off the pencil line too, or the rolling method that I showed you just now. Once everything's completely dry, you can start to think about what colours that you want to use for this painting. You can see that I've drawn a little frame around the outside. Mine measures 11 by 12 centimetres, just to show you the size that I'm using, and just adding a little bit more detail before I decide to mix up my colours. And you can see I've just added a few dot lines there too. So I've got a clean glass of water, and I'm using paints from A Galllo today. You can use whatever paints that you want to. All the materials, by the way, that I'm using today, I will link in the description underneath this video. I'm just using one brush. This is my number 8 round, and my little ceramic palette here from a set of 2 made by Etcher. So I'm using a colour called Notturno to start with. This is kind of like a muted brown tone with a bit of purple. I've got a brown tone, a magenta tone and a green tone. The green I'm using is olive and is a granulating colour. I've also got a nice bright sap green there, which I'm dumbing down with a little bit of the Notturno colour that I've just mixed up. Here you can see the kind of options that you have with line and wash. You can either do a blockish colour like the one on the right, or a more kind of watercolour look as the one on the left. I'm going to choose the sort of more relaxed feel today. So I'm applying the water first of all like this, where I want to drop in the colour. I'm making up the colours today, so I'm starting off by dropping in that kind of muted brown tone at the base, working wet and wet. So wet and wet means you apply the water where you want that paint to go. Now the lovely thing about this tutorial is you don't have to worry about putting the paint in exactly the right place. You don't have to worry about going outside the pencil lines. In fact, that's going to add another dimension to your painting. We launch new content every Tuesday on this channel, so if this is your thing, you may want to consider hitting that subscribe button and the little bell notification so you'll be notified every time I upload a new episode. You can see I'm just dropping in this colour here, just picking any colour that I feel like from my palette and just dropping it in. I'm adding a little bit of brown, a little bit of green, and I'm just being really loose with the brush. So just dropping it in wet and wet, you'll notice that when I'm dropping in that watercolour, it kind of blurs naturally into the petals like this. I'm taking it purposely outside the ink line now because I wanted to have a really sort of soft watercolour look, as I showed you with the mock-up that I did over on Procreate earlier on. The reason I did this is it gave me a better idea of how I want the finished painting to look. It isn't something I would ordinarily do for my watercolour tutorials. Usually I'm a sort of really precise botanical painter, so I wanted to have a rough idea of how this finished painting would look, which is why I sort of just mocked it up in Procreate. Now, if you do like botanical paintings and you enjoy a more detailed approach, then we do have a Patreon where every month we upload a brand new content that isn't here on YouTube. So in case this is of interest to you, let's just take a little look. Are you an aspiring artist looking to take your skills to the next level? Or perhaps you're looking for fresh inspiration? Then you may want to consider joining our Patreon. Our Patreon tutorials have much more in-depth instructions and are a much slower pace, and depending on the membership level you choose, you can have personalised feedback from me and video calls. Unlike our YouTube tutorials, our Patreon art classes focus on really learning the art of botanical painting, and I will guide you step by step through the technique and skills you will need to learn and improve your botanical art. All of our Patreon tutorials are exclusive to my patrons and you won't find them on YouTube. So why not join up to our Patreon and start creating botanical art you can be truly proud of. So the Patreon tutorials are much more detailed, much slower pace, and just botanical painting with watercolour. You can join at any time and leave at any time, so if that's something that appeals to you, do check us out. Okay, you can see that I'm dropping in at the magenta tone here, just randomly putting this colour where I want to add a splash of colour and make it bright. So just using the tip of my brush to just pat onto the paper, which is wet, and you can see how it just naturally blurs. For the middle, I'm just adding a tiny bit of a yellow to that, just to brighten it up. As I said, all the materials I will link in the description box underneath this video. If you are enjoying this video, could I ask you to give me a big thumbs up? It's a way of letting YouTube know that you're enjoying my content, and I'd really appreciate your support. Just rolling around the outside with the brush here and just merging those colours, really taking it outside the pencil lines now. You can do this at the beginning and just trace your drawing on top of it if you want to, but I prefer to do it this way because I have a better idea of where I'm going. I will put the line drawing right at the end of this video if you want to trace it down yourself. It's a great way of getting started with watercolour without having to worry about doing the drawing, and I know some people get a bit worried about that, so you can trace it down and I'll put it right at the end of this video. Also, I'll put it over on our Facebook group. We have our own private Facebook group called The Wonders of Watercolour, and if you go over there and join us, you can have access to all of our line drawings and references for our YouTube tutorials. Everything's dried down now, so I'm doing a sort of magic tweak at the end, and you can see that I'm just going back to my fine liner pen. Where the paint has gone outside the line, I'm utilising this now to create a bigger shape. I really like this kind of loose, jaggedy look. It really makes it look kind of really painterly and watercolour-like, and I really love this look of this kind of double outside edge. I'm using some dots to add a bit of detail, continuing up from the lines that I've already drawn in, and I'll just continue this until the painting is complete. You can add as much detail as you want to, or as little. It's just a great way of learning line and wash to create a little fast painting, and like I said, it's suitable for beginners. So remember to stay right until the end of this tutorial so that you can have access to that line drawing and of course see the finished painting. Once again, if you've enjoyed this video, could I ask you to hit that like button and comment below if you've tried a line and wash before. Do you do it this way or do you prefer to do it the other way around? I'd love to know. So once again, I'll say thank you for watching now. Stay until the end so you can see the finished painting and get access to that line drawing. Thank you for watching and I'll see you next week.